sell products in the DMs between $1 to $100,000 without needing necessarily human involvement to actually make that purchase happen. Literally an hour into the story, we have 3,000 applications and hundreds of people trying to book a call. We literally did not have closer call space. I was like 1 hour in, he's like traveling, he's like on a podcast tour. I'm like, dude, you got to take the story down. I'm like, we cannot handle this amount of lead flow.
We're trying to find people who will actually convert. So don't be afraid to qualify and disqualify people. It sounds like you don't really use any humans in this, right? Which will be like a big...
Not anymore.
Yeah, a big mindset shift. And maybe a bit scary because there's a lot of setters out there.
Yeah, it hasn't 100% replaced setters yet, but we are only like 6 to 12 probably months away, if that. If you're kind of creating or rehauling your content strategy from scratch, the best thing to do... Okay, real quick, before you watch the rest, I wanted to mention that you are about to watch my full episode from the Masters of Lead Generation podcast, where I break down how we've helped businesses automate their Instagram DMs to create predictable revenue. Now, the host Alisha reached out after we collaborated for a couple of years building and scaling Founder Magazine's DM system when she worked there. And they are an 8-figure entrepreneur publication and created some incredible results. Now, this episode shows you the real systems behind turning your social media engagement into consistent sales. So let's dive in. Hope you enjoy the episode.
Today's guest has generated over $76 million in revenue with DM funnels for businesses like Russell Brunson, Codie Sanchez, her first 100K, Jenna Kutcher, Amy Porterfield, Dean Graziosi, Mindvalley, and 3,000 more. She helps information businesses scale to $1 million plus per month net profit, with DM marketing funnels generating qualified leads and sales every time they post on platforms like Instagram. Today's guest is the co-founder of School of Bots and the master of DM funnels. Natasha Willis, welcome to the Masters of Lead Generation podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for our conversation.
Excellent. It's more of an interrogation where I need to know everything about DM funnels to build pipeline and get some qualified leads. So maybe start us a bit like high level with what is a DM funnel and a couple of juicy stories, because I know your website is full of case studies and people are going to be very interested to know behind the scenes of some of those businesses that I just mentioned.
Yeah. So the easiest way to think about what I'm calling a DM funnel is obviously you talk about landing page funnels all the time, but like you said, some people still don't really understand how it works and what it is, even if they are generating 7 to sometimes up to 8 figures. They're like, oh, I still don't really know how it all works. So in terms of the process, think about the landing page funnel process and the email process combined, but in a conversation. So in other words, if any of you who are listening right now have seen, for example, on Instagram, someone says, hey, I work with so-and-so. If you want to learn more, just comment strategy or comment whatever word below, and I'll send you a message to learn more. So that can be done for a freebie. It can be done for learning more to work with you and sending people to your application. But essentially the first step is that is one of 9 different ways that Meta allows you to send an automated message to somebody. So if you set this up, then what you can do is on your account, you can tell people to comment instead of going to your link in bio. They then are able to comment on your post and receive an automated message. And that automated message can be the beginning of a whole automated conversation that's leveraging AI, that's tying into your database, that's pulling from your calendar information. And that now becomes your conversion vehicle on organic social versus the landing page. And the biggest difference there is like, okay, why is this even worth my time? Is because on average, if not at minimum, you're going to see 3x more leads come through that conversion vehicle because it's easier and it's faster and it's more native to the platform. Meta loves it. Users love it. Businesses love it as a result. There's over 600 million conversations that are had in the DMs every single day on Meta platforms. So as a result, we can see it's like people are spending time there. So you might as well use that versus trying to get them off the platform to your website. So that's kind of the quick high level. And then we can get into some other juicy stuff.
Awesome. And so that we're all on the same page, you can do this through organic, but you can also do this through paid ads, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. And do you need a large following to do this through organic? Like, how big should a business be before they actually engage in a DM funnel?
Yeah. So there's 2 ways to look at the strategy. The first is that if you are under 10K followers, but let's say you still get a lot of like paid traffic to your account, but nonetheless, like your 10K followers don't really post that much on organic, then what you'll want to set up initially is just one-step automations. So it's kind of a one and done deal. Because if you think about where you're spending resources in your business, it's probably not going to make sense for you to like, unless it's already in your plan, to all of a sudden try to pump out a bunch of organic content and make these like full funnel processes that you and I are going to talk about here, like worth your time, right? If you are above 10K followers and you post at least 4 times a week on Instagram, then that's when this becomes something that you absolutely need to be doing. Otherwise, you are literally leaving 95% of your revenue on the table. So that's kind of the tipping mark, is like the follower count, as well as just like how often are you engaged on this channel? Because if you're scaling your business with paid, amazing, and you can still use this, but it's just not going to make sense for you to focus on the organic process that we'll talk about here.
Awesome. So let's say that I'm a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur and I want to start with my DM funnels. I'm like, yes, maybe I'm sitting at the 8 to 12K mark for followers. Where should I get started?
Yeah. So for that, it depends then at that point, how many times you're posting a week on Instagram. And the other thing too to mention is like, what is your reach looking like? So the two kind of pathways that we have, if you're in that boat that you just mentioned, is that if you are posting organics consistently and you're like, it's my goal, I want to grow, my personal brand or my company brand, like this is a big focus for me, then you'll want to set up a process where in your DMs, people can come to it when you promote your freebies or you promote how people can work with you. And typically if we're looking at, are a lot of the people who are listening have like webinars or lead magnets and that kind of thing? Or is there also some e-com too? I can speak to that as well.
All just lead generation, no e-com, not allowed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, ecom. So in that case, then literally whatever your lead generating asset is, AKA a free PDF, a VSL, a webinar, evergreen or live, an application for people to work with you, AKA like a type form or whatever. So those are going to be like the main ways that you want to attract people to what you're doing and say, hey, if you liked this post, you want to learn a little bit more. So you would want to set up one of each of those that drives the most traffic for you right now and the most customers. So if you're running ads and you have, an account that has 8 to 12K followers and you have one of your lead magnets, let's say, has gotten at least 500 opt-ins over the last couple of months, probably an indicator people are liking it. So build out a funnel for that. And once you build out these funnels, then they will just stay on and run on autopilot, essentially. So at that point, then the strategy is about how do we increase the conversion rates on the back end after we capture that traffic? And then also what is the traffic strategy, which we can kind of talk about from A to Z. But that's how you would essentially decide is like, okay, what do I even want to use this for? Oh, how do I get customers right now? What's the number one way? Let's build a DM funnel around that because that's the conversion vehicle that's working for me already with like a landing page and emails.
Awesome. And one way that I explain funnels is that you kind of just have them by default, right? It's just the experience someone's going to have with you. All we're doing is mapping out the touch points. That's all it is. And I think all of these funnel bros have like really overcomplicated what funnels are. And I remember the first time I saw an Infusionsoft funnel back in the day, my brain melted out my ears. And I think everyone gets really worked up. But literally all we're doing here is crafting an experience and just thinking, where are they now? And what's the goal, right? So for this, typically, we would think of it as the goal will be to book a call, or some of your info product clients would you ever be doing straight to purchase? Like what would be like the end goal that you're reverse engineering from?
Yeah, so most of the time these days, because we work with clients that have products from $1 to up to $100,000 that will sell in the DMs without human involvement, and sometimes with some hybrid human involvement if there's like DM setters. But we are getting to the point now where it's like we can pretty much eliminate that for the most part, and DM setters really only add value with like personalized follow-up and like nurturing before a call, but they actually don't really have to do anything to book the call. So right now we sell products in the DMs between $1 to $100,000 without needing necessarily human involvement to actually make that purchase happen. There is a human on the other side, but like the AI can pretty much handle most of the conversation, and setters who are in the DMs or just a social media manager can go in and kind of just answer any questions that AI is not able to, which is usually about 5% or less of the conversations. So considering that, the question to ask yourself when you decide, do I want to promote a low ticket offer, maybe a membership, or like my high ticket offer? If you have, let's say, 3 different types of offers, usually we want to just start with whatever's going to add the most revenue to the business. So most of the time, it doesn't necessarily make sense to focus all of your attention on, let's say, the low ticket offer when your high ticket offer is what makes you the most money. And it's just the proven system, right? So what we can do in those situations is every call to action that you use on your posts, on your stories, you can even do this on your lives, is you can say, hey, comment to learn more to work with me, or send them to like a freebie, because that's going to get you a ton of traffic. And then once they're in the DMs and you qualify them, then you can have, let's say, simplify it really like easily to 2 buckets. Bucket 1 is qualified people. Okay, we invite them to book a call, and that's kind of the end of their journey. Unqualified people, now we introduce them to your lower ticket products, which might be a membership or a one-time purchase, but it's way better for us to do it at that point when we know for sure that they would have not been a qualified lead for your high ticket offer. So that's typically how we'll approach that process if you have multiple. If you only have one, then obviously just promote that main one.
Yeah. Yeah, and it makes sense. Always clear the room on like the high ticket stuff that's working, and then get that cash flowing, because that's where all the money is, and come back and you can work your way back down the funnel. So I'm thinking even for us as an agency, if I wanted to get started, what it sounds like is I would have, and just so you know, we just did a launch and I started ManyChat just so I could have an intellectual conversation with you, so I actually understood. But I remember us working on them together at Founder, right? That's how we met, just so everyone knows. Natasha worked with me at Founder and ran our DM funnels, but I was like, I got to get a refresher on ManyChat. Number one, it's very easy to use. And then going back to that, so for us as an agency, I might have something like comment, learn more, or something like comment agency, and I can tell you more about that. Or alternatively, I might have a lead magnet. So I might have some posts going straight for the jugular. Hey, do you want to work with me? But then how do I think of the percentage split in that strategy? How many are lead magnet? How many are straight for the jugular? See if you qualify.
Yeah. So there's 2 things to think about. The first is that ideally you want to have 1 in every 3 posts be a CTA post. So you want to have 2 posts that are not a call to action, so that people who are in your community, who are following you, who are just interested about what you're talking about, are having conversations in the comments without being essentially trampled by all the comment call to action words, right? Where it's just like, why is everyone saying this word? Like, this does not feel like a genuine engagement. Whereas your 1 in every 3 posts having that, it's like, okay, this is my way to give you guys a lot of value. Lots of people want this thing. And so there's a win-win there. So we want to have that split ideally if possible. And it doesn't matter how many times you post a week. Ideally, that's the split that you kind of, tackle. Unless you literally only post once a week, then maybe you only do a call to action post once a week and that's your thing. In terms of the split between a freebie versus paid, typically we'll do 50-50. So let's say that I am going to have 4 call to action posts in a given week. That means that 2 of my posts will go to a freebie and 2 of them will go to, hey, come apply with me and book a call. But we'll want to rotate them so that it's like maybe Monday is your, hey, freebie. Then Tuesday is, hey, come work with me. Wednesday could be your freebie. And then Thursday could be your come work with me. And then maybe Friday, Saturday, Sunday is just, whatever other shareable stuff that you want to post. But if you're doing the 3-in-1 rule I just mentioned, that means then that Monday to Thursday schedule, you'd want to have 2 other posts happening in between the call to action posts as well.
Got it. Okay.
Does that make sense? I know I threw a lot of numbers at you.
It definitely makes sense. And now, before we get into like the intricacies of the funnel, let's talk about what sorts of posts you see working, because that'll be the next question people have. Well, what do I post? Do I have to be shaking it to a TikTok trending noise or something? And then what sort of lead magnets are you seeing working? And we'll focus on like that posting, and then we'll get into the step-by-step of the funnel.
Perfect. So we've tested so many different lead magnets, like 50,000 different ones over the last couple of years in terms of different formats, listicles, like all the things. So ultimately, what's most important is if you already have something that is resonating with people, regardless of what channel you're receiving traffic from it on, organic, paid, from X, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever, use that because it's clearly resonating with people. So don't just like start from scratch and take the advice I'm saying to like, oh, she said I should do this type of lead magnet, so like I'm going to create one from scratch. Try to use what's already working for you. If you don't have anything, the easiest thing to do, if you are open to feeling very personal with your audience, is that you can just grab one of the most common questions that people ask you, put together, ChatGPT prompt or whatever, put together a like 3 to 5 page Google Doc and then have that be your lead magnet. And so the cool thing about that is that it's very minimum viable. It also feels very personal, like, oh, this person like put this in a Google Doc. It feels like I know them, right? I'm like receiving just this doc from them. And then you can have your call to action links, at the end of that. So that's kind of the format that you could use just to like get rid of all the complexity of like fancy design and PDF, like how do I upload it? Where do I host it? Just like all those things is just get the Google Doc up and going, even if you already have all systems in place to actually build, strong lead magnets like what I'm describing. And then in terms of the format of it, the biggest thing is just like, what's the biggest question I get asked? And how can we just format that into a title that either is a problem or a solution? So problem would be something like, if you need 5 ways to invest in real estate or something, or 5 ways to boost your Facebook ad results. Whereas solution would be how I did XYZ thing. So one of those 2 frames will work really well. And ideally you want to have a number in there just so that you can set some expectation of people feeling like, oh, this is something useful. Where the number goes a little bit bonkers is like once you get past 20, people are like, okay, this is going to just either be a bunch of shit or like this is too much work now. If people are like 76 ChatGPT prompts, like, no. Versus like 20 ChatGPT prompts to do XYZ things, like, okay, I can read 20 things. So those are a couple of the things to keep in mind for like the actual thing that you're going to deliver. And then we can talk about content in a sec, but I just want to make sure that that all makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. So we're going to reverse engineer from getting a booked call. And that's down this end. On the other end, that's where we're going to end up. That's our finish line. At the top, we have our different types of posts that you just went through. And those posts are going to offer something. Every 1 in 3 posts will have a call to action. No matter how many times we post, that's what we want to do so that we're not feeling like we're just always extracting, like we're still having that community and that vibe. And then they can go to a lead magnet. The lead magnet doesn't need to be anything fancy or crazy. You don't need to be like 1 billion ways to do this. It's just the way that we do it is because we post enough across LinkedIn, YouTube, and our ads, we see signals of what works. And then once you see that signal, you just double down on it. And then you keep refining and it just goes like 80-20 rule, 80-20 rule, 80-20 rule. And you get down to like what people actually want. And then what will happen is, just remind me again, how often should I do it for see if you qualify and to get the lead magnet on those 50, CTA 50. Posts? 50-50. So 1 in 3 times I will do a call to action to DM me, and 50% of the time it'll be for something free. And you can test out different lead magnets, of course. And then 50% of the time it'll be to see if you qualify.
Perfect. Great memory.
I'm listening.
I'm impressed.
Great. Excellent. Active listening.
Fantastic. In terms of content, you would ask me kind of like, how do we drive traffic, right? Do you want to get into that next or something else maybe?
As in like what types of posts to do? Mm-hmm. Yeah, tell me that. I would like to know that.
Okay, cool. So one of the biggest questions I get asked is when should I use carousels versus when should I use reels? Reels are typically, a good reel is going to get you 50% or higher non-follower reach, whereas carousels are usually somewhere between 97 to 99% of your followers. So it's good to do carousels at least a couple times a week because it helps you tap back into your existing audience, which if you didn't start using something like ManyChat from the time you started your Instagram, which almost nobody did, then you have people who are following you who are not yet on your email list, who haven't applied to work with you. So you want to keep tapping into that audience, or if you have a new offer for them, then of course do that. But reels are where you're going to get just the most engagement. So if you're really trying to grow your account, just focus entirely on reels, and you can do carousels later once you're, at the follower mark or whatever you want to be. So with reels, a lot of people were very, very heavy into like super easy B-roll with text on top, right? And that was working for a long time, for about 2 years. Now, what is working incredibly well are series. So what you want to figure out is if you're kind of creating or rehauling your content strategy from scratch, the best thing to do is determine 3 content formats that you can pump out sustainably, that you genuinely enjoy creating, and that allow you to display whatever it is that you want to show, your expertise. So in your case, it might be funnel breakdowns and maybe a day in the life of what you're doing. And you're very specific about what you're showing, in those. And then maybe the third is like some kind of teaching or valuable, tips thing. But the idea with series is it doesn't always have to be part 1 of whatever or day 1 of this. It can just simply be a topic that people expect you to talk about. And it's designed as like the same thing visually and somewhat like verbally as well of what you're saying. So day in a life is like the easiest one because everyone kind of gets that, right? It's like, oh, they're showing a day in my life. Who hasn't seen a reel that's like that? And so you can start to think about different ways that applies. And I'm going to pull up my doc where I track all of the series that I see that are doing well. And I'll give you guys like a couple of examples. So There's one guy who literally just shows his day in the life. He has like the most ridiculous thing where he like puts his face in ice. He like drives around in his Rolls Royce and he like gets super sweaty and runs like on the street in Miami. So that has literally been getting him 150 million views plus, and he has been growing by 1 million followers every couple of days. So that is like an example where he doesn't say really anything in the videos, but you just expect the format and it becomes addicting to watch, right? Because you like that format. Another one is a gal who had this series called 20 Ridiculous Habits of Silicon Valley Entrepreneurs. And so she had one video per every, 20 habit. And that was like a mini series where if that does well for you, okay, awesome. Now let's just like keep that going as like more of an evergreen thing. And you can just keep talking about that. Another one is this nail gal who literally just does day in the life of doing 8 nail clients, for example. And like all these people watch, right? People who get their nails done, people who do nails, and these videos have millions of views on them. And she just does that a couple times a week. So these formats are just working really well because once you find your signature format, you could do that for years and it could become what you're known for. And then if you start with 3, that just gives you an opportunity to kind of vary up your timeline, vary up the feed, and then also be able to test a few to figure out like what's going to work for you.
Yeah. And with these day in the lives, are these all having the call to action of DM me this comment, or is this more of a to bring new people in? What's going on with
both? So both can work. So that's where the 1 in 3 rule will work, where you can say, okay, if I am just going to start with one series to make things super simple, right? I'm just going to pick my content format. That's going to be what I show. Then 1 in 3 of those posts should have a call to action. If you can vary up the content format, then it doesn't really matter whether you pair like one of your 3 formats with a call to action always. It's more so just about when it's being posted and making sure that we are, again, just not inundating people with a call to action for every single post. So it actually doesn't really matter because you do want to have a call to action in some of those. And if you have one that gets picked up, all of a sudden it's like 1 million views on it or something, or just like more than your average, like throw a CTA on it. Like, why not? And you'll get some leads from that. So that's the best way to think about it. It's just the 1 in 3 every single time, no matter what.
Awesome. And we'll have carousels. Those will mainly get picked up by our existing followers.
Yep.
So it'll be a great way if you haven't really tapped into Instagram yet, is to do some of those, because if you haven't got like the traction of getting picked up in the algorithm, that may or may not take a bit of time. You can get lucky and hit gold straight away. But my experience is if you're kind of learning social media, it takes a bit to learn the platform and figure out what's going to get picked up. Yeah. So now we know what posts, we know how often to do them, and we know what to send people to. As a very quick question before we now get into the strategy, the nitty-gritty of the funnel, what happens after they DM, how many times are you seeing, let me rephrase this, how often do I have to post on bloody Instagram? What's the, let me just ask you the question on my mind. How often, to be actually truly successful, are we talking 5 times a day? Because when I start to do the mathing of what you're saying, it's like, hang on a sweet second. How many day in the lives am I posting here? What's going on?
That's fair. And that's why you need multiple formats of content if you're going to post multiple times a day, right? Because you can't do the day in the life forever in every single video. And again, that's just one example of content format, just for everyone who's listening. If you don't want to do day in the life, totally okay. You can do whatever the hell you want, but just a repeatable format. So in terms of how many times you need to post a day, really the answer is just how fast do you want to grow? Because at the end of the day, it's both quality and quantity that's going to win on Instagram. And a lot of people say, hey, I think I can only really get out 3 quality posts before the algorithm reach, everything starts to kind of dip for me. And so that's where I'm at. That's typically where I see most big accounts that I work with, that we see the behind the scenes of, or that I just observe on Instagram, is usually they're between 2 to 3 posts a day. Now, at the end of the day, there are other accounts, though, where they have been growing like crazy, and that's because they post 5 times a day or 10 times a day. And as long as it's good quality content, then what happens is new people are seeing each post essentially. So percentage of your followers might see posts 1 and 2, but then another percentage might see posts 3 and 4. And so it is better to have more volume there if you can. Sustainably speaking, it's just determining what's doable for you really, and if Instagram is the priority that you want to to focus on. Because when I ask people like, why do you want to post on Instagram? Most of the time they're like, because I think I should. Right. Well, I'm like, okay, well, that's not a good enough answer, because if you are more maintenance posting just to like let people know you're alive, you know, and be like, hey, I'm a real business, like, but I don't really give a shit about like growing my followers and whatnot. I get business a different way, or like, I don't need a lot of customers. Well, then in that world, maybe it's only a few times a week. And it's like, all right, I just want to get up 3 posts a week, just have some stuff up, like, you know, nothing too crazy. But if you are actively trying to grow your brand, and Instagram does bring in the most revenue from most of the social medias, like Instagram is usually at the very top of the list, other than YouTube. So with Instagram and YouTube, it's like, okay, if you're going to post on Instagram and you want to make it a top revenue channel for yourself, then aiming for 2 to 3 a day is a good place to like reach for.
And as you said, you've got to prioritize it. It's hard, and it's easy to optimize for the ego. So for me, like LinkedIn and YouTube, that makes me money. And it's like, I'm not going to do new stuff yet until like those channels are maxed out. But it's also a different way to think about it. LinkedIn is not 3 to 5 times a day. That's once a day, a good post. YouTube, we post twice a week, and we'll do some community posts. And any more than that, you would burn out the algorithm, and that wouldn't work. But when you're in that, like, it doesn't matter if you're 7 to 8 figures, because it's time, money, resource, focus. So you shouldn't just like tick the box on Instagram. And that's what a lot of people do, right? They'll just they're like, oh, I'm going to do it, but oh, it doesn't work. Well, no, you're not actually doing it properly. You're not doing it strategically. And as you said, you have to think about, is this even the right platform for you?
Yes.
Don't just do it because you see everyone else doing it, right?
Exactly. And that, I think, is the biggest trap and just the challenge. You know, people, as you go from 6 to 7 figures and then 7 to 8 and then 8 to 9, you just get better decision frameworks and you're making better decisions as a result. But a lot of people, as you cross, you know, 1 million for the first time, or as you cross 10 million for the first time, or 100 million, like you don't realize, but decision frameworks are like the main thing you need to keep thinking about. And so too often people will like hit 10 million, for example, and be like, okay, cool. Now I'm just going to like make worse decisions and like waste time on like XYZ social platform because I want to. If that makes you happy, great. But if you're doing it, like you said, because of just simply ego, or because you like see everyone else doing it, but like, let's say organic's not making you that much, but paid is like crushing it for you. Well, then don't waste any time creating organic content and just like put out more volume of ads, you know? So it's for everyone. You just have to decide what your purpose is so that you can keep doing it. Because if you don't feel like you can do it forever, then it just doesn't really make sense to do it. And that's okay. Like content's not for everyone.
And for me, like I'm thinking about this. I will do my Instagram one day. For now, it's just where I shit post and just random stuff, because we do get I get a lot of followers because we're running a lot of ads now. So I just keep my stories up to date, just like what you were saying. I keep my stories up to date. That's easy. I'm like, oh, here I am with a landing page, woo, and like showing results in Slack in our wins channel and stuff, just to keep it pumping.
Super easy. You have your format, right? Where it's like that's your decision framework. You're like, if it's not a shit post, funny thing that like brings me a little cackle and like a Slack win and something else, like I'm not gonna post my like random breakfast or my like whatever thing, you know. So just so your energy can go to the right place. That's most ROI focus for you.
Exactly. And if and when I do start Instagram for booked calls, like how many are you seeing? And then we'll get into the DM funnel, like how to actually do it. But because that's like the biggest thing, right? Like, well, you've got to reverse engineer. For me as a business owner, how many sales do I want? How many leads do I need to get there? And do I even need to introduce Instagram? So, or are my other channels enough? How many booked calls are you seeing from the inputs you're doing?
Yeah, so the best way to kind of think about it, I'll give people a math equation in a second, but I'll first start with a couple of examples. You're going to get the most results if you have been already growing an audience, but you have not been using DM funnels, because that means you have a lot of existing, and if you're doing a good job with new followers, new traffic every single day that you are not tapping into. So it's literally just free money that you're going to get to scoop up. To give you two examples of that, I had a client who came on at the end of January. They were getting about like 30 to 100 maybe booked calls a month from Instagram, just like link in bio. From week 4, we were at an 8,400% increase in booked calls for the month. And that brought in $243K in revenue for them in those first like 30 days. Whereas previously it was like nothing. Like they couldn't really attribute a whole lot to Instagram. So that's a big deal because, again, free money. Another example, this client had 600K followers. He just signed on like end of January as well. And previous to us working together, he was getting like 200 applications, not even booked calls, applications to his type form from Instagram. And then those people, like they had maybe like a 70% booking rate off of that. Then he posts one story. Literally an hour into the story, we have 3,000 applications and hundreds of people trying to book a call. We literally did not have closer call space. I was like 1 hour in, he's like traveling, he's like on a podcast tour. I'm like, dude, you got to take the story down. I'm like, we cannot handle this amount of lead flow. And so it happens every single time. So currently our constraint is we're having to scale the sales team and do a sales team turnaround. But the idea is just that like, if you have an audience that you've been building and you just focus on bringing new people in as well every single month, you have a shit ton of free money that's waiting there for you. So the equation that you can do is however many new people, like just the easiest way to do this is just looking at your new people every single month. Because obviously if you just look at existing, at some point that's going to run out. So the new people who are coming in, typically we want to see somewhere between like, and I don't want to be dramatic, but like 5,000 to 15,000 followers a month is a good place to be once you're rocking and rolling. And so if you have that, for example, what you can then do is say, okay, 85%, let's be super conservative, 80% of those people are going to opt into a post and give me their email in the DMs. Okay, so out of those people, now what are the steps in your qualification process? So for example, 50% of those people would give us their phone number, I'm sorry. If that's a big process for like your setters, for example, to call those people immediately, or you even like say, hey, I actually don't care about emails, I want phone numbers because that's a real lead to us. Great, so then that's your number of leads. So now we've distilled down 80%, then 50% of that initial. So that's the number we're left with right now. Now we start to look at, okay, if we ask them 5 to 8 qualifying questions about income, maybe about just like age or what industry they're in, like whatever essentially you ask for, we should see a 60% completion rate off of that. So we're taking 60% of those 50% of people. And then finally, the call booking rate we want to see off of that is going to be at least 20%, but you'll eventually be able to get it to 30% or higher. And so that's the final number you're left with to do that math, to essentially decide, hey, is this worth it for me? Like, does the math here in terms of like what I'm currently getting with new organic traffic and the booked calls that I can expect from that?
Okay, I think that's a good segue then now into getting into like the details of the tacticalness to bring everybody back. We want to book calls. We've been posting our posts, whatever they are, different series, different carousels, different stories, different reels. 1 in 3 posts have a call to action. 50% of them are going to a lead magnet. 50% of them are going to DM for like, see if you qualify. Then what? They send the message. What's next?
And what happens? All right. So inside of the DMs, most people, I just want to compare to like what you're going to typically see on the market right now. If you go and just scroll your reels for like 10 minutes and just comment on every post that you see that says comment whatever word, most of those responses are going to be one message that send you back a link. And it's like, hey, check out this link for the lead magnet, book a call, freebie, whatever, or paid product. And so that works well only when you're giving people an impulse buy. So for example, shop my shirt I'm wearing, or like, if you're looking to grow on Instagram, like it's literally the easiest one, right? It's like any channel. Like if you're on Instagram and it's like, hey, learn how to grow on Instagram for $47 for my course. Great. That's an impulse buy. I'm on Instagram. I want to grow. You have 1 million followers. Great. So those are the types of things where it makes sense to do that. Any other time you want to generate the lead, you want to qualify people so we can get them to book a call, right? So because we're talking about that use case, as soon as somebody comes in the door, the first question we want to ask them, it's kind of similar to setting up a quiz if you have any experience with that, or just setting up a general application, which is like ask people the easiest question possible or the most important question. So for example, one of our clients, they can only serve clients that are based in the US or Canada because they help people invest in the US stock market. Okay, well then in that case, first question we need to ask is like, hey, where are you based? And that's super easy because I don't even have to think about it. I could like say that in my sleep versus like other questions. It's like, do I want to answer that? Or like, what is that? Or I have to calculate that. So easiest, least friction question possible. Where are you based? From there, whatever your like main qualifiers and disqualifiers are, you want to ask those questions next. So for example, in that specific client example, we want to make sure they have at least 100K of income. And we also want to make sure that they're between 25 to 50 years old. So we're going to ask all those 3 questions back to back, very conversationally. If somebody drops off during that point, we're going to send them 2 follow-up messages as well. And those are happening a couple of minutes in. So 3 minutes in, best follow-up time. After that, you're typically going to lose a good chunk of those people, up to 90%. And then 22 hours later, we also reach out to them. And we just send like a GIF or like a voice note or something that feels like very casual, essentially. So at that point, we've qualified the lead, and now then we'll typically either get their email or just send them straight to go and book on either a setter or closer calendar, just depending on like the sales team setup and what they want. So that would be the easiest way to think about it. And then you can add in more questions, you can add in more logic, if your offer's a little more complex, but that's really the gist, is like qualify people. If they're qualified, let them book a call. If they're not qualified, downsell them into a membership, low ticket offer, etc.
And the thing to remember is we're not trying to get leads, we're trying to get buyers. And so in any lead generation on this channel or in the stuff that we do in our agency, people forget that and they're like, the volume. I'm like, no, like when we're trying to find people who will actually convert. So don't be afraid to qualify and disqualify people. It sounds like, I don't know if you have a rule of thumb with how many questions back and forth until you let them have their thing, until like from drop-off rates and stuff. Do you have any rule of thumbs there?
Yeah, 5 to 8 is the sweet spot, where it allows us to nurture somebody enough, allows us to find out enough information about them so they have enough buy-in to then take the next step with you. Because if we go a little bit less than 5, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and you should test it for yourself to just see for your market, for your people. But most of the time, it's not enough rapport building with the back and forth touch points to then, from a psychology standpoint, like, oh, I'm committed to this process. I've talked to them now like 5 back and forths. I'm now going to click to actually book the call. So even though you might get more people to like the point of booking a call, the people who actually click in and book might be lower with the less number of questions. Whereas if we do at least 5, then we typically find that we can get an 85% or higher click to the booking page. And if we pre-fill that information and everything, then like I said, minimum 20%, but oftentimes it can be much, much higher, like up to 70 to 80% or higher. Again, just depending on all the different factors involved.
And some of it will depend on the actual execution of the text, right? That's going back and forth. So sometimes people execute funnels and they're like, oh, this doesn't work. And then you'll look at it and go, this is shit. Like, you did a bad job. So we want to keep it conversational, right? How long should our messages be? Can you riff any messages that kind of, that kind of work throughout the funnel?
Totally. So best rule of thumb is try to keep your messages to 2 sentences or shorter. And a lot of people are like, well, how do I say hello and like a CTA? Like, that's my entire message pretty much. So what you can do is just don't use a period or exclamation points more than twice, essentially. So what you could do is say something like, hey, great to connect, like commas between those 2 phrases, and then the next thing. So even though theoretically I could turn that into like 3 sentences, it still feels like 1 sentence, very conversational. Commas are like the easiest way to do it. ... sometimes, but the younger generations more and more were like, we don't like that ... Feels a little bit suspicious. It feels a little bit uncertain. And then M dashes are the other one that I see all the time. And we used to use these a lot in the DMs, but it just feels unnatural in the DMs. They work great for emails. They work great for landing pages. Just not so much in the DMs. So commas are going to be like your best friend. So 2 sentences ideally max, which means it's about 3 lines of text. You could try to break it up if it feels like a wall of text. But ideally, like, that's how long you want the message to be. Shorter the message is, the higher it's going to convert. Like, the more people are going to click essentially for the next step. That's like the biggest thing with the format. Now, as we get into the funnel then, and we're asking people questions, where we can, we want to offer them buttons that they can click on, but also make sure that we can understand what they're going to type back. So if we go back to the example I gave you, right? Where are you based? US, Canada, Europe, somewhere else, in the world. Okay, great. We have some button options that are showing US, Canada, Europe, other parts of the world. But if somebody types back in, they can also, process and go through. So that'll be essentially like the user experience at each touch point. And then I mentioned a little bit earlier, we want to have follow-ups at every single point as well. So that means that when it comes to what we're sending, best follow-ups, 3 best follow-ups. 1 is literally just a question mark. Just 1 question mark. That's it. It's not super aggressive, very just like, hey, quick second to send you a question mark. Then the second is, hey, just didn't want to leave you hanging, or just want to make sure I didn't leave you hanging, and then comma, whatever you're trying to get them to do. So that puts it on you, where you're like, oh my gosh, I messed up. I'm so busy. You know, it's like that frame, the superior frame, without being like condescending. And then a lot of the time people are like, oh no, I'm good. Like I got the link. Sorry, I got busy or whatever. So that works really, really well. Third one, which I think I originally heard this from Neil Patel years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, we've got to try it. And like every time we use it, it works great. But these days I feel like it's a little bit more cheesy. It's the name question mark. It works really well on SMS. Sometimes it works well on Instagram. I encourage you all to try it, but sometimes it can feel cheesy where it's like, Alisha question mark, and it's like, is this a spam message? Like, so, whereas with text, there's like, how do they know my name? You know, so it has slightly different psychology, but that is another one to test. So those are 3 follow-up messages that work really well to get people replying to you if they drop off at any point in the conversation. I'm going to pause there. Let me know what else you want me to dive into. I can share anything else on the copy front too.
Awesome. I think I'll recap. 5 to 8 messages before you either book them in or downsell them. If somebody ghosts you, you've just given us 3 different formats to follow up, because we always want to get them to the end goal, right? And you're competing with a lot on Instagram. Marketing exists in context, and there's a lot of other shit going on for them, and even away from their phone as well. We've spoken about it being very conversational, using commas, no more than like 2 sentences. That's what we want to try and keep to. And the commas help us out as well. And then with the actual copy, I imagine it's just very much like, hey, awesome, let's see if it's a good fit. Like, tell me, where are you based? And then they tell you, and it's like, okay, awesome. Like, what age are you? And then you're giving them options, or they can reply, and you just set up the DM funnel so it's going to pick up on the button clicks or pick up on the text responses.
Yep,
cool.
Exactly. And then last thing I did not mention, but for book calls specifically, because you're collecting information from them, and ideally you get an email in the DMs, you can also pre-fill all the info on the page so that all they need to do is they go to it, they choose their time, and then they can click submit on whatever scheduler you're using.
Yeah. And is that connected to, as you said, like whatever scheduler? Through ManyChat, you would just, like if you were doing it through, I don't know, Go High Level or some other platform, you just connect in your Gmail calendar or whatever, and it pulls from that, and then you can get it to show a few times. Is that how you would do it?
You can do that also, but what I'm talking about is actually much simpler and easier. It's literally just grab your link from like Go High Level, for example, or Calendly or whatever you use, OneHub, and in the URL itself, just like, you can pre-fill a landing page URL where like email equals, whatever in the URL. I'll actually spell it out for anybody who has not done this, is like, try this. If you have a scheduler, at the end of the URL, add a question mark and then add email equals, type in your email, hit enter on the link, and then it should pre-fill your email on that page. Now, the parameter I just used, email, may not be the one that your scheduler is using. And if that's the case, then it may be, I don't know, something else. Email's usually pretty universal, but that will actually work regardless of any integration. So you don't have to like connect your scheduler to ManyChat or anything like that. We can just send them to that URL that has that information pre-filled, and you would pre-fill it inside of ManyChat because it'll give you the setting essentially to do that.
And how do I measure the success of the DM funnel? I know you mentioned a few like benchmark metrics, but I've got this set up. I've got all of my posts scheduled. I'm doing it properly. Now, how do I know if it's working? And then my follow-up question will naturally be, what do I do if it's not working? Because I'm sure marketing is a humbling sport. I'm sure you've had to fix a few funnels.
So the main things to look at if it's working is there's either going to be a traffic or conversion problem, right? So the first thing is for the traffic piece, if you are not getting at least 30 comments per post, then there is usually something that is not resonating in the caption of the post with the freebie or the call to action that you have. Like, for example, let's say I talk about, I have no idea, like 5 fitness exercises I'm doing, and then I'm trying to sell you business coaching or something. And I'm like, oh, by the way, like what allows me to spend time on fitness is running an online business. And if you want to learn more about how I make passive income every day, blah, blah, blah. I know passive income's like a banned word now on Instagram, Facebook, but nonetheless, let's say I said something like that, comment 10K and I'll show you how to make 10K from home, whatever. All of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I was on a fitness post and now you're like asking me to comment to like learn more about your make money online opportunity. Doesn't mesh. So we want to try to always have the post be somewhat tie backable to whatever the call to action is going to be. So for example, if you're talking about wealth generation, make your word wealth and make your offer about wealth and just like frame it in that way. So the key is just like keeping the topics the same. So that's the first benchmark. Once people get into the DMs, there are lots of benchmarks. So I don't want to confuse anybody. I'll just give you guys kind of in order what you would want to see. If you set up those 5 to 8 questions, first question should get at least a 70% response rate. If that is not happening, but you had a post go viral and you have thousands of people in your DMs, let's say at least 1,000 people within the first 24 hours, great. Well, then that probably means that a lot of these people aren't following you yet. And so what you'll want to do on your post is instead of saying comment, blah, 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 and I'll send you this thing, you want to say follow me, then comment this word. And when they follow you, that's going to then prioritize your DM in their inbox. And that will fix that 70% rate usually. If you're still under 70% and you're like, man, but my posts are just going crazy viral right now, that's okay. Like absolute minimum, 50%. But for the average account, 70% is where you want to aim to be. So that's what happens once you get into the DMs. Now from there, in terms of like metrics of what you would want to see across the board, let's say for the booked funnel, booked call process, we want to see 80% or more of people's emails being collected. We want to see 50% or higher phone numbers being collected, especially if you're based like in the US, Canada, or let's say Australia, UK, like one of those 5 kind of main countries that everyone likes to target with their ads. That would be like the main number that you're looking for. And then from there, we want to see ideally 60% of people complete the 5 to 8 questions in their entirety. So that by the time they get there, then your booking rate, you would want to compare that. I know I give you an example, but you'd actually want to compare that to what your Typeform or your like website application is doing, because that's going to be the biggest mark of success. Is like, I can tell you all of our minimum KPIs, but I'm not building your system, at least right now. And so like with that process, you just want to make sure it's outperforming what you're currently doing with your website. Because if it's not, then that's the first metric that you'll want to fix in the whole process.
Mm-hmm. And I know you said earlier that it sounds like you don't really use any humans in this, right? Which will be like a big...
Not anymore.
Yeah, a big mindset shift and maybe a bit scary because there's a lot of setters out there who make a lot of money setting in the DMs. So how do we think about that? Do we need someone even like any more setting, or is this totally replaced setters?
Yeah, so it hasn't 100% replaced setters yet, but we are only like 6 to 12 probably months away, if that, for it to do that. So where setters can add the most value, and this is a conversation I've been having a ton with clients lately who, like some of them have 60 plus setters, you know, on their team. So there's a lot of people who are there doing their thing. So the biggest shift is like, okay, well, what can't we automate that adds a lot of value and increases show rates and close rates? Because that's really the biggest thing at the end of the day is like, we can get a ton of calls that are qualified, booked on the calendar through this process and through even just like regular website applications these days, right? Automated emails, automated SMS, voicemails, whatever. So what can setters do? They can call people. They can actually send personalized videos of their face, voice notes, whatever, prior to the call. They can find out what somebody is looking for, send them custom trainings or custom PDFs prior to their closer call or their setter call. And so those are ways where they can nurture people so that they can do the things that essentially AI and automation will not be able to do, at least for a while. And then from there will always be, I think, opportunities for them to be able to just shift the work that they're doing, where they're still talking to leads, they're still responsible in the sales process, but they're doing this stuff that isn't like templated. Because a lot of DM setters just send templated messages. So that's what's replaceable. And that's the types of people who, you know, in any industry are going to get replaced, versus if it's like, okay, how do I send personalized messages and actually give a shit about, like, go on their Instagram. They have a family. Call out that they just went on vacation and you saw that. Like, call out that maybe they might be looking for XYZ thing as a result of that. Like, there's so many things that we can do. It's just people either are lazy or they're strapped for time and bandwidth. So if we can remove some of that, like, rinse and repeat work from them, then they can actually add a lot more value in that world as well.
And it gives them more time to do that human to human connection. As you said, like, there's like limited energy and resources with human capital, right? So if you have them doing templates instead of the automations doing it, you're wasting time. And we've spoken about some of those that you just mentioned, like the no-show tactics, like sending a quick video face message, sending a iPhone blue tick message, sending a training resource, just getting the commitment and consistency of them to actually show up. Now, before we do wrap up, did I miss any questions, or is there anything that you can give us final words of wisdom to send us on our way to start our own DM funnels.
Yes. What is my final word of wisdom? Biggest thing would be for the call to action word. If you remember just one thing, two things actually. The call to action word, try to pick a word that's less than 7 characters and that is one word. So instead of comment, learn more, you would want to say comment, learn as an example there. And then the other thing is, which we talked a little bit about, you can proactively do this instead of waiting until your results aren't looking the way you want them to, is instead of telling people comment, learn, you would say, follow me, comma, then comment, learn, so I can send you XYZ thing that you're promising them. And that, even if you don't set up a whole DM funnel, but you just want more leads coming to your business and messaging you, great, have them do that. And then you can just manually message those commenters as well, especially if you don't have a big page right now. So that's a way for you to just tap into that psychology that's working well, even if you don't want to set up the whole automation at first.
Amazing. Natasha, as always, you are very articulate and well-spoken and very forthcoming in all of your information and generous. So thank you so much for coming on today. I know you're a very busy woman building some fucking huge empires. So to share your time with us today, I really appreciate it. After this, where can people find you? Should they go start commenting, learn on some of your stuff on Instagram, or how can people find you after this?
Yeah, the easiest place is Instagram, which my handle is Natasha T. Willis. And if you want to shoot me a DM, like please feel free to, and just say, hey, I've either used ManyChat and here's what's not working the way I want it to, or I want to, like, what should I focus on? This is my business, this is my account, and I can take a look and I can give you some recommendations. I'm super happy to do that. And we're also finally getting started back up on YouTube after like a little hiatus. So we'll have a lot of good stuff there, different case studies, different ways to like think about and approach this stuff too. So if you want more like long form tutorial based stuff, then that's where that'll be as well. You can just look up technically the School of Bots. If you go to youtube.com/School of Bots, which is our company name, I changed it to my handle, but it still redirects to me. So I think that's just easier than sometimes Natasha T. Willis for people. Either way.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much. Chat soon.